A very good evening to everyone. And first of all, I'm really very sorry because there has been a long gap for the posts which I had posted previously. In the between, there were some technical issues and I was trying to, improvise on the editing, but that couldn't really materialize. And so I thought if the editing is not proper also, I think what matters is the content and what we want to give to the students. So that's the most important thing. So before beginning, I would like to tell all my Zoom students here and also the people who would watch me in the post that very soon we will be starting off the mains answer writing class on a weekly basis at our academy, and there'll be limited people for that. It'll be a long-term program until your prelims and even for the mains, those who want to attempt for 2023. So for the details, please give me a call on the number, or even you can text me for further information. It's going to be very helpful because we will be discussing essays, we will be discussing mains answer writing, and at least 2 essays we will be discussing physically in the classroom, and we will be practicing mains answer writing with respect to the static portion and also your current affairs also. Along with that, there will be a section like module wise completion of the syllabus until your prelims and the mains. It will be carried forward and this is really important for those who really want to ace the 2023 examination, because this will be helpful for them and you will be ready for the prelims and the mains by the examination date when it comes up. So for further details, please give me a call. And without wasting much time, I would like to tell you that today's topic will be on agriculture. Now, agriculture, as we know that it is a major employment provider in the country, and almost 50% of the workforce, are employed in agriculture. And agriculture is one very big topic, not only in the discussion during every session of the monsoon, but also during elections and especially the budget. So when it is election time and the budget time, what the people of India really look forward to is mostly taxation and what the government is actually going to do for the agriculture sector, because it is a major employment provider, and most of the people in the country are in the agriculture sector, like almost 50%. Also, apart from that, it also contributes like 17 to 18% of the GDP. The contribution to the GDP though has been decreasing if you take comparison from independence, but the workforce employed in this sector hasn't really reduced, and so there is a large number of people reduced, especially employed, especially in the rural areas. Now today's topic, I'm going to discuss about agriculture being a bright spot during the pandemic period. This was actually making news around because when the pandemic was there was the lockdown. Various sectors, especially contact intensive sectors, service sector, etc. were affected. There was a total shutdown of the economy, not only in India but worldwide. And so agriculture was one such green spot in India where the government came up with statistics showed that the agriculture performed very well in comparison to the other sectors. And also agriculture is important because of the 3 bills that we had seen that made news in the parliament. Apart from that, climate change is really affecting us. So sustainable agriculture is another very big important topic. So today's topic is about agriculture being a bright spot during the COVID. Let's just see what are those steps which actually made agriculture the green spot during the pandemic period. And also let us look at certain points which the economic survey calls immediately to be implemented in the agriculture. Apart from that, what are the recommendations of a committee for doubling the farmers' income, which suggests so that agriculture can really improvise even more and the farmers, double their income as the government's aim and mission is. Now, agriculture is demographically important as it is the broadest economic sector and also plays a very significant role in socio-economic fabric of India. Agriculture in India is the seventh largest. We are the seventh largest agricultural exporter worldwide. And if you see in every free trade agreement, agriculture is most deeply discussed. Even if you see the Ministerial Conference of the World Trade Organization, agriculture with regard to the food security subsidies was discussed widely. Now, the agriculture sector during the pandemic period, going into the details further, grew. The gross value added was about 18% during 2021 and 22, and it actually experienced a very buoyant growth in the past 2 years. It grew at 2.9% in 2021-22 and 3.6% in 2020 and 21. So it showed a lot of resilience during the COVID pandemic. Now, if you look at the data of food grade productions in 2021, the agriculture production was 308 million tons. This is with regard to the fourth advanced estimates. In comparison to the previous year, that is 19 and 20, it was 297 million tons. So almost a difference of like 12%, 12 million tons increase in 2020 and 21. So this was the agriculture production, and now let's see why and what are the reasons or the factors which contributed to the sector to grow during the pandemic period. Now, when there was a lockdown everywhere, there were certain exemptions that were made to the farming sector, like farming operations by the farmers and farmers workers in the field were allowed. Agencies that were engaged, this is point number 2. The agencies that were engaged in procurement of agriculture products, including the MSP operations, were carried on by the government. Mandis, 3 mandis operated by the Agriculture Produce Marketing Committee were also functioning. 4, that is shops and manufacturing units for seeds, fertilizers, pesticides were functioning. 5, intrastate, interstate movement of harvesting and sowing, etc. with related to machines like combined harvester and other agriculture, horticulture implements were also allowed to be moved. 6, cold storage and warehousing services were functioning for the farmers so that there is no wastage, especially with the perishable material. 7, transportation for essential goods. We could see that the Kisan Rail was functioning very well even during the pandemic, and shops of agriculture machinery, its spare parts, etc. were allowed to function. And finally, the custom hiring centers related to farm machinery also were allowed to function. Apart from that, the reason why the agriculture actually performed well is because we had good monsoons previously in the past 2 years also. Then government enhanced its credit availability to the farmers, especially in the form of Kisan Credit Card Scheme, and then the loans available to the farmers. Apart from that, you have the Kisan Samman Nidhi, etc., where money is given to the farmers before the harvesting and the reaping season for inputs. Then improving in investments, not only from the government but also the private sector. Then creating market facility, for example, e-NAM. Now almost 18 states and almost 1,000 markets have joined this e-NAM facility. So a wider market for the farmers for their produce. Promoting infrastructure development, we have the Agriculture Infrastructure Fund which was created by the government, and so for infrastructure, for example, like your warehouses or your mills, etc., are given a boost because of this fund, where money is available, where infrastructure is being created for the farmers. There is increased provision of quality inputs to the sector in the form of neem coated urea, and now nano urea has also come out. Then there is subsidized, there is electricity, though even this has its negative impact also. Irrigation, micro irrigation is being taken up on a large scale. So these seeds are being provided, quality seeds are being provided to the farmers. Apart from this, there is the livestock. Now, apart from these infrastructure and institutional mechanisms which went into the agriculture sector really performing very well during the pandemic period, it was the livestock, that is the allied sectors. The livestock fisheries also experienced a very buoyant growth and helped the sector to perform well. And these allied sectors have also been recognized in the economic survey, where the survey said that along with agriculture activities, the allied sectors actually performed really well with respect to livestock, fishery and other livestock related activities or your allied activities. So these are the reasons why the agriculture sector performed very well during the COVID pandemic. And as we know that food security is important, so basic needs of raw material and food coming from agriculture, it is obvious that the sector should actually perform well, and it's the most important thing for sustaining. So agriculture sector performing well. Now, we had seen that the factors which went through where the agriculture performed very well during the pandemic period. Going on further, what are the challenges then? Actually, what are the challenges, though this sector performed very well even during the lockdown, and keeping in mind that 50% of the workforce is employed in the agriculture sector. Apart from that, its contribution to the GDP and major employment provider in the rural areas. Apart from that, you have now climate change challenges and increasing population also, demand, especially because of the increase in the income of the urban areas especially, and the tertiary and the other tier 2, tier 3 cities. So there is a more demand for quality agriculture, for quality food especially, and a wider food basket. So what are the challenges actually that the agriculture sector faces? So basically, if you see productivity challenges, you have other institutional challenges, you have infrastructure challenges. With relate to productivity, if you see majority of the farm holdings are small and marginal, so almost 80% of these, and usually when the farm holdings are small and marginal, you really cannot implement technology related things with respect to farming. You cannot produce more. The farming produce is very much limited to the family or to the surrounding areas. So farm holdings and then further division among the family members of these farm holdings, a lot of land goes off in the boundary. You cannot do multi-cropping mostly on the farming. So these are the challenges first with related to farming, so small and marginal farming. Second is irrigation. Now if you see irrigation development, though we have a well established irrigation, but there is variation with regard to the reach and irrigation because of the geographical difficulties, and other maybe because of the rivers, because they are not perennial, etc. So irrigation is one other thing. In some areas there is over exploitation of irrigation due to tube wells and pumping system, especially in the northwest India with regard to Delhi, Haryana, Punjab, etc. On the other hand, you see the peninsula, because of the hard rock formation, they depend on tanks and ponds, and so the irrigation is not well developed. Apart from that, the rivers in peninsula are not perennial and they are seasonal, so irrigation does not really work well. Third challenge is the Indian monsoons. Now Indian monsoons have a speciality or a very important feature of being they have their own vagaries. They are not always every year the same. So there is a change in the monsoon, and we know that the El Nino and the La Nino, the La Nina and the El Nino actually affect the Indian monsoons apart from the jet streams also. So Indian monsoons having its own moods and swings. Some year it's good, some year it's bad. So most of the agriculture in India is rain fed. So Indian monsoons and now climate change having a much more larger impact. If you see this year, the monsoons have covered the whole of India by July 15th, and this has happened just 4 times, the IMD has said. And so we know that the sowing and harvesting season varies by at least 1 month from the south and the north. And so once for all, getting so much of rainfall in a particular month, there is definitely, we cannot store the water, and most of the water goes away, flowing away into sea, and it is wasted. So Indian monsoons have their own impact on the agriculture. When the monsoons are good, the agriculture is good. That also not for all places in the country. When the monsoons are bad, the farmers suffer. Then the next problem is the subsidies. Now the subsidies mostly goes to the large farmers rather than the small farmers. Also, if you see India, there are more farm workers than the land owners in India. So most of the subsidy does not reach to the workers on the land. It goes to the landlord, and the subsidies also sometimes are misused. For example, the subsidies in fertilizers, most of the industry makes use of this subsidy, and therefore that is the reason why the government came up with neem coated urea. Then the fifth challenge is your infrastructure, that is the cold storage and the food processing. There is a lot of wastage of perishable food products, especially in the country. Also, the farmers being not very much well in crop management or with the market knowledge and analysis, they tend to produce the same crop in many places. So because of excess of production, sometimes like onions, tomatoes and other fruits and vegetables are just thrown away waste because they are perishable, they have a certain lifespan, and so cold storage and food processing is still not very well developed in India to the power of what actually India is producing. So there is a need for a long range of cold storage and food processing, especially for the agriculture sector to be food secure and also sustainable. The sixth challenge is cropping pattern, fertilizer and soil nutrients. If you see, the soil is varied across the country. So every place, every north, south, east, west, you have different soil. Their nutrient features are very different. The cropping pattern is very different, but sometimes the policies of the government influence the cropping pattern. For example, your MSP, because of the higher MSP, most of the farmers are going in for production of wheat, sugar and paddy. This is leading not only to a depletion of soil nutrients but also water depletion and imbalance in agriculture production, where India is now importing a large amount of edible oils and pulses, etc. So the government is actually calling on the farmers to diversify their crop production, also to go in for more sustainable crops and not water guzzling crops. So changing the cropping pattern is what the government is calling for, especially in the northwest India, in Punjab, Haryana and Delhi. Rather than paddy, which is depleting the groundwater resources, the government is asking them to go for pulses and oil seeds, which is also good for climatically. It is the climate is very much suitable for production of these crops. So this is the excessive use of fertilizers. Though our fertilizer usage is not on par of US and China, which have the second and the third largest net crop area compared to India being first, our fertilizer consumption is not on par of them. But still, the large scale use of fertilizers somehow affects the food chain and also the crops. So this is the problem with the Indian, these are the productivity challenges, especially with the Indian agriculture sector. So these six, I think, which will help you to elaborate on a good answer, especially if asked in the mains. Now, as I said that there was a committee on doubling of farmers' income, which called on for certain recommendations after seeing the good performance of agriculture as a green shot in the economy during the pandemic period. Now, the committee on doubling of farmers' income said that the government needs to focus on developing of the allied sectors like dairy and livestock to improve and increase the farmers' income, or doubling the farmers' income. So this has been the goal of the government, to double the farmers' income. So some of the major recommendations I'll be defining now, I'll be spelling out now, where it has made some recommendations for proper food management and doubling the farmers' income. So number one, it said that the focus now should be shifted to harnessing the potential of allied activities such as animal husbandry, dairy and fisheries, because along with agriculture in the pandemic period, what we had seen is that there was a growth in the livestock sector, forestry and also the dairy and fisheries sector. So the committee says that focus should now be shifted to these areas to harness potential of these. So second is, it says to develop and implement small holding farm technologies. As I said, 80% of the farmland is small and marginal. So small holding farm technologies will improve the productivity of small and marginal farmers. Third, it says to prioritize the diversification towards oil seeds, pulses and horticulture. As I've said that India is a major importer of oil seeds now, and we had seen the problem that we had faced when Indonesia changed the cropping pattern, and also because of Russia-Ukraine war. So India is dependent on imports to fulfill its oilseeds needs. So prioritizing crop diversification to this will bring about a balance. It will reduce the imports and also provide sustainable food solution. Then coordinated action from the state government is needed to facilitate shift to high value and less water consuming crops. So government has been calling the Northwest India to change from paddy to pulses and oilseeds, and also the tobacco, the areas which grow tobacco, for example like Bihar, Jharkhand, Andhra Pradesh, to change to better crops so that there is sustainable agriculture and also helps the farmers to earn. Then the next is that the committee asks the government to increase R&D, especially to improve the productivity in the crops and the allied sectors. So increasing R&D is another recommendation. Then it says that the use of alternative fertilizers like nano urea and organic fertilizers. We had seen recently that the government had actually inaugurated the nano fertilizer of IFFCO in Kalol. So this is a historic moment, especially for the farmers in the country. Then the next recommendation is focusing on new technology like using of drones, AI-based decision support system. Using drones, as we had seen, can be used to spray the fertilizers, etc. And also for delivery systems also you can use drones. Then the last recommendation is supporting startups for innovation in agriculture. So startups in agriculture are one area where the startups are booming, especially in the food processing and agriculture sector. So supporting the startups, especially to come out with new innovations to develop the agriculture sector. Now, apart from the Committee on Development of Doubling the Farmers' Income, we had the survey which was recently produced in the Parliament along with the budget. So the survey also came up with the recommendations with regard to investment, crop diversification and organic agriculture. Now the survey also recognized the potential of Indian agriculture and said that it grew as a green spot during the COVID pandemic. But then it also identified certain weaknesses and areas which the government needs to work on if agriculture has to achieve its full potential and also cater to the coming generations and also to food security and also industrial security with regard to raw materials in the country. Let's see a few points which the survey made. So first it spoke about investment. It says that the investment is not as much as it should be in the agriculture sector and therefore calls on the government for higher access to institutional credit to farmers and greater participation of private sector in the investment. So this is an important point. It calls for private sector and corporate sector participation for investment in the agriculture sector. Next, the survey highlights how important crop diversification is. It says that the existing cropping pattern is skewed towards your cultivation of sugarcane, paddy, wheat, which has led to depleting of groundwater resources at alarming rates, and also points out that extremely high water stress levels are recorded in the country's northwest region. So to promote water use efficiency and also for agriculture to be sustainable, to save the water resources which are though renewable but not as fast renewable as much as the exploitation is happening. So to ensure water use efficiency and sustainable agriculture and to ensure higher incomes to the farmers, it calls for crop diversification, especially in the original green revolution states such as Punjab, Haryana, Western Uttar Pradesh, and says that they should change over to less water intensive crops like oilseeds, pulses and nutri cereals. Now, the government is already implementing the Rashtriya Krishi Vikas Yojana for this, but more has to be done with regard to crop diversification. The next important point which the survey makes is about water and irrigation. The survey points out that 60% of the next irrigated area in the country is serviced with groundwater, and the rate of depletion and extraction is more than the rate of recharge, especially very high in Delhi, Haryana, Punjab and Rajasthan. Therefore, it calls for increasing the coverage of micro irrigation. Micro irrigation is the most effective way of not only water conservation, but also it's the most effective way for utilization of fertilizers, and therefore that suggests that the states need to focus more on medium and long-term groundwater recharge and conservation. Finally, the second most important point, it speaks about natural farming. Now, the survey calls on the government to improve the farming, especially in an eco-friendly way, which is in tune with nature, ensuring chemical-free produce and also preserving the soil productivity, and also encouraging the farmers to adopt natural farming techniques. Towards this end, the government is already implementing a dedicated scheme such as Bharatiya Prakritik Krishi Paddhati scheme. So this is the second last point. And finally, the survey says that R&D, that is research and development, should improve on a large scale in agriculture. Now, research and development we always speak about, but research and development in agriculture will help how? First of all, it will help to develop new technologies, for example, like micro irrigation techniques, development of environmentally sustainable global food system, and ensuring food and nutrition, for example, fortified crops, or increasing the income by cost minimization. For example, nano urea is also an example of increase in R&D in the agriculture sector. Drones, the usage of drones, and also how to yield maximization, or R&D with regard to climate friendly, climate sustainable agriculture with seed inputs. So R&D, the survey says, is the most important input for agriculture to become sustainable and also to feed the coming generations and to cater to the industry and exports of the government. So it says that the every percentage of rupee that is spent on R&D yields much more better returns than the investment. So it calls for an urgent need to especially come up with large scale R&D investment, not only from the government sector but also private sector, to improve agriculture in India, keeping the features and the salient features of agriculture in India with respect to your small farm holdings, irrigation and etc., and usage of high yielding variety of seeds. So this is a few points which the survey has made. So we had seen that how agriculture had been a green spot during the pandemic period, and what are the reasons why it went, what are the challenges with regard to productivity with respect to agriculture. We had seen what are the important recommendations which the survey had made. So in the next post, I'll be coming up with what are the steps which the government is actually taking for the development of agriculture sector, and maybe a new topic. But once again, I'm sure that we will complete especially more than 60 topics until the end of August. And so please wait for my next post, and if you really like it, like, subscribe and share this with others, and please give me your comments on the content and whatever topic that you would like me to discuss. But until then, I think these points should really help you to write a very good answer in the mains. And all the very best, and take care.